Welcome back to the Tech Accelerator, Copilot for Microsoft 365. I'm Jeremy Chapman, and today we're going to look at the ways to deploy Copilot for Microsoft 365, in particular, the setup and admin controls that you have to do that. Now, the first thing that we're going to cover is actually the different Copilot experiences and apps that you have access to, so you know kind of what the end state is, and I'll try to point out the various controls in the apps themselves so that you can kind of see where they will be manifested in terms of the different Copilot controls, what you see in terms of plugins and apps, and also something called the work and web toggle that you'll be able to see in Copilot in the different standalone experiences. Then I'm going to go through some of the deployment prerequisites that will help you get deployed for Copilot, and also the setup guide that we have as part of the deployment process, where we basically created a wizard to help you go through all of the things that you'll need to do get Copilot set up and all the licensing and all the apps and everything else in place before users can start interacting with Copilot. And at the end, I'll also show you some of the key takeaways and other guidance that you might want to use to follow up on. All right, so let's get started. So first thing, to understand kind of how Copilot for Microsoft 365 works. This is important because a lot of the things that you're doing in terms of the setup and the admin controls are really going to be part of what you're seeing here. So first, the Microsoft Graph for your data. So you have to make sure that you've got the right controls in place. For example, if you want to do things like meeting recaps, well, those have a dependency on being able to get to the meeting transcriptions. Likewise, if you want to be able to deploy Copilot experiences in the rich client apps as opposed to just the web experiences, you're going to have the right builds of those Copilot apps and the Microsoft apps as far as Microsoft 365 to make sure that those experiences will light up in the right update channels, et cetera. And we'll talk about that. Also, using the web as part of groundings. This is great for if you want to get responses back from generative AI that's looking at things past the cutoff date for training, for example. And so you've got controls there in terms of being able to keep that control enabled, or if you need to, you can also disable web experiences as well. And users also have the control as part of their plugin and add-ons experience that they can use within the Copilot experience itself. So let's take a look at first the Copilot experiences and apps, just so you can get a flavor of some of the things that you can actually do once you're up and running with Copilot services in Microsoft 365 apps. So here you can see I've got Word open. Now you've probably seen a lot of these different cases where we're using Copilot either in the body of the document or on the side panel itself. But just a couple things to point out here. First, on the left-hand side, you can see I've got a draft with Copilot controls. So I'm going to actually draft a prompt, and I can reference a file if I want to. In this case, I won't. I'm just going to ask it to give me some instructions, a step-by-step guide to be able to change my update channels with Microsoft Intune. We'll be able to test this out, by the way, in the end, because we're going to show a demonstration of that as part of your deployment prerequisites. It's going to author everything that I need here in line. And you'll notice that I didn't have to even move from the document itself in the actual writing area of the document to basically get the generative AI to start through Copilot and to create me this nice step-by-step guide. Another great tip, by the way, for admins, and I come from a device management background myself, this is one of those things that really will help save you a ton of time as you look up things to do in your own day jobs to really get content and guidance for doing certain tasks as part of IT management. And on the side here, you can see that most of the apps that you have with Microsoft 365 apps, including Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook, etc., they might have these side panels that will be able to be expanded so that you can either edit content that's in line on the left of them, or you can actually create content from there, or you can revise content, as you're seeing here with some of the sample prompts that are added to it. If you want to change, summarize a doc, for example, reword a document, those types of things can be done from the side panel as well. So another thing that you'll want to be cognizant of is in the standalone app experiences, and there are a few of them, you can get to them from copilot.microsoft.com. You can get to them from Windows, and also there are mobile apps and other experiences where you'll see this. Now here you can actually enable or disable whether or not you want to have work experiences outside of Microsoft365.com or other areas, and also the plugin experiences. So here you see web content. A user can, as I mentioned, either disable web content if they want to, or enable it from here. And as an admin, you have control over that setting at a tenant level as well for people using Copilot for Microsoft 365. And as you add plugins later to the experience, they will also show up here so users can pick and toggle the different plugins that they want to enable as part of their generative AI and submission experience in terms of how they get their responses, whether or not you want to tie with external data sources, for example. All right, so then let's dig into some of the admin topics. So first off, in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, we've actually built out quite a few different common controls that you'll use for Copilot. I'm just going to point out a few here. First off, and I mentioned the web content before, the second one from the bottom, you can see that we have the ability to either leave the state on by default, or if I need to, if I'm in a regulated industry, for example, I can disable that experience as well if I need to. And also, we have a couple of other things that you'll want to be aware of. First, Copilot for Microsoft 365 experiences in Bing and Edge and Windows. Those you can actually control from here for that work and web tab that you saw before. And also, if you want to enable or disable or basically tailor the experience around Copilot with commercial data protection. So that's going to be when, for example, you want to use it without Copilot for Microsoft 365, where you get the commercial data protections like no training, no eyes on for Microsoft, or any saved state, for example, as part of that Copilot with commercial data protection experience. You'll get all the links to all the controls here right from the admin center to be able to tailor that experience to your needs. Now, another thing to be aware of, obviously, as part of deployment, and I mentioned plugins before, all of that work's going to be done through the integrated apps experiences in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And just to go into settings here, what that's going to mean is that you'll be able to determine who can access different apps in your tenant. And for Copilot specific plugins, you can either enable for all users or disable and make it no users, or you can apply for specific users and groups. So for example, in the past, I've done demonstrations on using different ticketing systems like Jira, for example, where I might want to enable that plugin for my help desk, but maybe not for the rest of the company. I can just scope the add-in for the plugin to be used by the help desk team as opposed to everyone else. So that gives you the flexibility then in terms of controlling, which different users or user groups have access to the various plugins that you might want to deploy later. Next, we're going to move on to the Teams Admin Center. So from the Teams Admin Center, remember, you're going to want to do a couple of things here, because one of the most powerful things that I use Copilot for almost every day is meeting recap. And it's really cool because it works both in the meeting to catch up on things that you might have missed if you're late to a meeting, which I often am, or if you want to go to a recap, maybe you forgot about what you talked about last week, you can go into the meeting recap and actually look at summaries of an existing meeting. So that will really save you a lot of time and also catch you up again if you're late to something. So it's in the meeting policies view that you'll find that control. So if you scroll down and go into transcription, because we need to have meeting transcription enabled for these types of experiences to light up. A couple things to point out here. You'll want to have transcription on. In most cases, you'll want to use the on with transcript control. If, however, you turn off transcription and you just want to have it on, that means that you'll be able to use the recap during the meeting experience, but not use it after the meeting. Whereas if you have it like I've got it here with transcription on and on with transcript, once transcription's been enabled by the meeting organizer, for example, you'll be able to use it both during the meeting as well as after the meeting as part of the recap experience, which is what I would recommend, again, what I use almost every single day. Okay, so now let's talk about deployment prerequisites. So there's a few things here to remember. We're going to go through how to get the actual licenses, applications, the binaries deployed as part of the deployment. These are going to be things that you might do as a Microsoft 365 admin or an endpoint administrator to get the right experiences on people's devices, as well as make sure that they have the right licensing in place. So let's start out with how you would do a greenfield or a new Office deployment. So typically, I would say go to config.office.com, where you can basically use the Office customization tool that you're seeing here. Now, of course, the first thing you want to make sure that you have is the right set of apps, which can be Microsoft 365 apps for business or for enterprise, based on what you have and the license type that you own. Now, the other thing that you'll want to do is also change the update channel. So we recommend the current channel, but you can also use the monthly enterprise channel or current channel preview. So you'll need to update the update channel in your organization for the users that you scope for Copilot services with the Microsoft 365 apps. And you can do that also from the Intune console as well. So the Intune console has similar controls, and those are basically using the same control set that we just saw from config.office.com. And what you'll do here is you'll just go into the similar channel update control that you can see here and select again either current channel preview, or monthly enterprise channel. And when you do that again for new deployments, it will make sure that those are in the right channel for you. Now, let's say you've got existing users that you want to update the channel of their devices on and not push out a deployment package and not worry about getting the apps out to those devices. Well, there's an easier option to do that, basically using policies. This is the same as group policy. It's ADMX-backed templates, and you can do that from Intune or other policy mechanisms. I'll show you the Intune experience. But here, for example, if we create a new policy, we'll do that. We're going to select the platform, Windows 10 and later, and the profile type is the template. That's the easiest way. We'll open up administrative templates, then we have to give it a name because it is a configuration profile. So now we're going to just search for update channels. And when we do that, you'll see that in a second. There it is. There are two that are exposed. You're going to want to use the update channel 2.0. And then select the ones that I just mentioned will work: monthly enterprise, current channel preview. Then you'll go through the normal policy config with the scope tags, the assignments. I'll go ahead and add all users in my case because it's quicker. And then I will go ahead and create the policy. So now the next time that device checks in for policy and that policy gets enforced on that managed device, it will automatically go through the update of the channel of the Microsoft 365 apps on that device. So you don't have to worry about pushing out any packages. It's just done through that policy in that case. This is probably the most elegant way to change or swap the update channel on the devices that you want to scope in for Copilot services and the rich clients. Okay, so now you've got the apps down. You've got some of the policies configured for things like Teams and the transcripts. Now, something else that you'll want to do kind of once you've got all those different pieces in place is you'll want to make sure that you have the licenses configured for your users. So you've kind of laid down the groundwork so far, but now what you can do is just go into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Yes, you can license people one by one, but that wouldn't be as fun as doing bulk licensing, and you can use PowerShell or other means if you want to do that as well. I'm going to show you how bulk licensing works here because I have 3 different users selected. If we do that and I do manage product licenses, I can choose to assign more. And, basically what that will do is append additional licenses. If those users don't already have a license, it will actually send a welcome email from my address as well to those users that have been added. And once I save, they have the tools in place now. So they're going to have the apps in place that they need. They'll have the right policies configured for things like Teams and the meeting policy, and they'll have the prerequisite licenses in place to be able to start using Copilot right now. And so where a lot of this comes together and kind of, I showed you all the different underlying pieces. I like to do the kind of mechanics and underpinnings of any process, but you've basically got everything in place. I'm going to actually end where you might want to start in some cases, but basically all you need to do is make sure that the right policies are in, the right binaries are deployed out to your users' devices, and the right licenses are in place. Now, the Copilot for Microsoft 365 setup guide walks you through a similar process and just kind of shows you all of those different things. And this is where you would get to it from. So you're going to start in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And here, under the different setup experiences, there's quite a few things that you can do where we've built these different wizards out to be able to manage quite a few different experiences. So here I'm going to use the Get Ready for Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 setup guide. Now I just have to look and see what it's going to bring me, what the user impact's going to look like based on everything on the page. And if I go into Get Started, you'll see that it kind of walks me through a lot of the things that I just talked about, and also things that if you saw my previous session on getting the enterprise ready for Copilot, it's going to talk about some of those different themes there as well. getting the right apps in place, the right version and update channel configured and deployed, making sure that you have the right privacy settings and configurations in place. If you want to do things like organizational branding, that's all linked from here. Microsoft Purview information protection to get your data house and search components stored and inline. Microsoft Entra ID, you're going to want to make sure that you have things like multi-factor authentication turned on for all users and they've got accounts. Outlook and Teams, Microsoft Loop, if you don't have that running, that will have a Copilot experience too. So you can see all of those different things that will be impacted. Also, if you want to turn the licensing on from here, you can do that from here too. I showed you the method of doing that from the license management view, from the all users kind of identity point of view, but you can do that from the wizard as well. So from here, I'm just going to select the group that I want. I'll go ahead and use all my users. And then that's going to take that from my pool of licenses that I have. And I can also determine if I want to send different emails beyond just the ones that I picked to additional people. Maybe they're managers, if it's, say, a group. Maybe it's other champions in that same region or that same office that will help these folks in terms of prompt tips and other successes they're having as they use Copilot themselves. That's another thing that you can do is in terms of adding additional users to the group that you're sending kind of the invites to, and kind of the email that we craft here that you can use to inform people that they're going to have Copilot experiences light up very soon. So now you've basically got everything in place. There are a couple other policies that you can set that I didn't show everything today. You can, for example, use Intune policies and ADMX policies to control, for example, the behavior of the Bing sidebar. You can do things like policy manage some of the configurations, fine-tune some of the things in Outlook, for example, for the Copilot experiences using similar policies also. So what you do there is you'd look in through the kind of like I was showing the update channels before in Intune. You can search for Copilot and find those additional settings, or search for Bing and sidebar and those types of things. And you'll be able to find the additional policies that are available to you to even more cater and fine-tune the experience to your liking, so that people have those Copilot experiences based on the configuration you set. So then once you start deploying Copilot out to all your users that you scoped in initially, you can start looking at that and then broadening that deployment out to everyone else. So everyone in the company and the organization can get value from your Copilot deployment and start using generative AI. So I'm going to leave you with a couple additional guidance pieces and things I'd recommend that you'd watch and consume in terms of getting ready for deployment for Copilot. So first off, we have the Copilot setup guide materials. You saw it running, but just to get to that quickly, it's at aka.ms/copilot/setup guide. There's a lot of getting started documentation. Again, aka.ms/copilot/get started. And I do a lot of Microsoft mechanics. You may know me for Microsoft mechanics. The complete playlist for everything you'll want to know in terms of Microsoft 365 and all the Copilot experiences, you're going to want to check out aka.ms/m365 Copilot mechanics. And also check out the shorter explainer videos. They're like 2 minutes or so long each. And they go through kind of the core experiences for Copilot as an admin, for security, how things like semantic index work, etc. You can get to those at aka.ms/copilot explainers. And I would say, like, you should use, like you saw in the first demo, I use Copilot to actually write my own guidance and documentation for step-by-steps to do a lot of the different work or in demonstrations and things that I do. You can save a ton of time just by going into either Word or copilot.microsoft.com and typing what you want and getting that guidance back in terms of how to do stuff, whether it's deploying applications, deploying services. You'd be surprised with the web grounding using kind of the search backend that we have. It actually gives you very up-to-date, very accurate responses. I use it for things like command lines, PowerShell. There's a ton of different use cases as an admin yourself that you can use to get the value from Copilot, and just think about how that then projects upon all the different users that might use it in their other jobs, whether it's in different roles in finance or sales or marketing. You can get all the domain specific stuff as an IT admin, all of the different value and all the things that you can imagine from the other user roles there too. There's a lot you can do with Copilot. So now's the time to start deploying Copilot, and keep checking back to the tech community and also Microsoft mechanics, we make more and more updates to Copilot for Microsoft 365.